All right, so I'm responding to this report that's been released by the United Nations Human Rights Commission. It's a subcommittee that, let's grab the, it's a finding by an independent international commission of inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. Legal analysis of the conduct of Israel and Gaza pursuant to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. All right, so it's at first glance it seems quite a weighty. It seems quite an indictment. The word genocide carries weight and has consequences and implications, and any commission issuing such a finding, I guess, when makes one stop and ask questions, what is going on? And I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of what is the current situation. Suffice to say that the United Nations Human Rights Commission is not without controversy. Appointing Iran as the chair of that commission in 2023 has a lot of implications. And now for South Africa's Navi Pillay to chair a commission of inquiry into the alleged genocide and conduct of Israel in a conflict in which South Africa is a party to illegal proceedings before the international courts, where there has been no finding yet. So this is an attempt to preempt the findings of the Court of Justice in The Hague. The commission itself is not a court of law; it's merely a commission. I guess on this, similar to South Africa's Human Rights Commission, it's the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations. So yesterday I read part of the report, and it's a tragedy, but when one gets to issues of fact, you realize that the report starts falling apart. There's a summation of factual findings that essentially accuse Israel of launching an offensive on October the 7th, 2023 against Gaza. Summation of factual findings, point 20. On 7th of October 2023, Israel launched its military offensive in Gaza, which included airstrikes and ground operations. There's absolutely no attempt to narrate the actual truth of what happened on that day. I would have thought at very least, if there was a case to be made, it would be made on the basis of actions subsequent to a legitimate defense, legitimate acts of self-defense that might have overstepped the mark and into full-blown attempt to eliminate the other side. This clearly is a baseless tract. It's a baseless accusation without any merit that can be rejected at face value. At the face of it, it can be rejected, because to make such an elementary mistake that parrots essentially our own president's similar rhetoric on the issue, on the anniversary of the conflict, he made the exact same remark that essentially cast Israel as the aggressor on that day of October the 7th of October 2023, which I find frankly disgusting, given the enormity of the event and given the religious implications of a jihad, an Islamic jihad being launched in the name of Islam, and an Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, where the goal of that operation was supposedly to liberate Quds, to liberate Al-Aqsa, and to take as many Israeli citizens, black and white, Arabs and Jews, as possible. Bear in mind that South Africa's own Truth and Reconciliation Commission made a finding in its report after the conflict of apartheid, which for me it's a South African drama, and to extend this drama to the Middle East has all sorts of implications which we can go into. The TRC made a finding with regard to the St. James Church massacre, where the perpetrators of that massacre who killed Christians for being Christians were not granted amnesty in terms of the reconciliation project. And similarly, I would think that any South African who has any jurisprudence, has read any documents that are legal documents of our own, written pursuant to our own constitution and our own preamble, would realize that there's a big problem in trying to paint jihadists as somehow legitimate resistance to a so-called occupation. Obviously, you might disagree on what are the ramifications and what are the context of this conflict. I've learned to my detriment that it's not a simple cut and dried case. It's not a simple case of black and white. I used to believe that there was a similarity between what was going on in Israel and Palestine and our own country. In fact, when Sharon was in power and when there was a war, the first war in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, I actually took a position which put me at odds with, I would say, the mainstream discourse at that time. I chose to side with the Palestinian cause. I was at the time a member of the South African Union of Jewish Students on campus, and I took a difficult path of supporting the Palestinians in their what I thought was a legitimate movement, with similar to our own anti-apartheid movement. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I such an idiot. And I admit I was an idiot. I had such a surface sophomore understanding of the conflict that I've been forced to essentially recant and retract my position as a result of a series of excisions that have occurred in the name of the Palestinian conflict. I can refer you to my own miserable dealings with the South African justice system, where in a case that is parallel and it's distantly related, and it's only related to this conflict because it's a case about secular Jewish identity, where I was put on trial in a court of law about my Jewish identity. Essentially, it turned into a racist inquisition of my identity, where the fact of whether or not I was Jewish was in the preliminary proceedings became a fact of the court before the court. It turned into a decision handed down by corrupt ANC apparatchik Helton Cheadle. There's a dossier and an affidavit, if anyone is interested, detailing his fraudulent activities as a lecturer at UCT Law, as a director of a law firm, whose client was the very client that I was suing at the time. And not only was it his client, turned out it was his business partner, Max Sisulu, and Kagiso were involved with Media 24. There was a content exchange on their multi-choice channels at the time. I'm not going to go too far into this, but you're welcome to look at the documents in my media alternatives. I've been writing extensively on this topic for many years. About that, primarily, I am offended as a secularist. to be on the receiving end of a decision which essentially, in summation, what it says is that because I am a Jew in breach of my religion, I cannot make a claim of anti-Semitism on the basis of an offensive inquiry into my faith by the other party, where all Jews are essentially thrown into the same category. We're one hegemonic, monolithic block. There is no disagreements in terms of doctrine, and Cheadle, in his valiant effort to steer away from the doctrinal issues, took up a position consistent with a form of Judaism, which you could say is an ultra-orthodox view of Judaism, and therefore deserves to be laughed at to any court of law to do this. So I'm quite au fait with the consequences of an inversion of reality. In my case, where the facts of apartheid and racism and race profiling are inverted to make out a case that I invented this whole system of apartheid in my head and that there was no basis in reality, and I was doing it merely to aggrandize myself because to quote, I'm a rainbow nation in one person, and I'm not the right size, shape and color and creed. To do this, to invert reality of apartheid, where the TRC report is laughed and mocked in court, where the findings itself reference the commission as merely a commission, where the report is merely a report and there are no consequences of that report. To be here now with Navi Pillay issuing similar inverted realities, I don't know whether it's confirmation bias. I think it's something else that why is it that people are prepared to believe the lies? You would think that even from a scientific, empirical, evidence-based point of view, that if there was a case to be made that Israel was committing some form of genocide, it would be not on 7th of October 2023. You cannot say that Israel launched an attack on Gaza on a Jewish holiday. I mean, this was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, one of the most holiest days of the Jewish calendar, when the Arab states launched a surprise attack on Israel, and 50 years later, the Gazans, Hamas and Islamic Jihad do exactly the same thing. Nelson Mandela was a Zionist, a bipartisan who believed in the right of Jews to their historical homeland. And I'm sick and tired of being burdened in this manner, where it's so easy just to blame the minority religion, to blame the minority involved, and to take up the cudgels of Islamic Jihad to the degree where you fabricating reality because there's a Nakba theology, there's a replacement theology at work, where many Muslims deny the existence of Jerusalem. They refer to the city as Quds. They deny the archaeology. They deny the history of Judea. They deny that Jesus Christ was a Christian. They claim that Jesus was a Muslim, that Joseph and Mary were Palestinians, and the Jews stole the promised land. Now, I don't care how you feel about the theological issues at hand, but if you believe in history, if you believe in ideas, for me what is paramount here is ideas of democracy, ideas of secularism, and the archaeology shouldn't contradict one's perspective. You shouldn't be able to dig up Stars of David in Jerusalem, right? If the version that is told was true, you would be digging up the archaeology of Islam. Unfortunately, Islam is a relative newcomer. It is not a 5,000-year-old religion with a 5,000-year-old history. This attempt to not only claim the history of the Hebrews and to displace reality, to make the Palestinians essentially the Jews of the Middle East, must be condemned. It must be condemned because a lot of the so-called these Palestinian talking points are what I refer to as yakdib. It's Arabic lies. The lie, for instance, that is told when the Bedouins are suddenly occupying the land, when you've got people claiming that they were displaced from Nablus in 1948, where the Jordan ethnically cleansed East Jerusalem and the West Bank of Jews, and that unfortunately is a part of the reality that is not being told on the world stage. People are not prepared to look at what is the evidence and what is the truth. The truth of the matter is Jews have lived in that area for centuries, for thousands of years. There are yeshivas and synagogues that were destroyed under the Jordanian occupation from 1948 to 1967, right? That no one talks about. So I'm going to leave it at that because I'm dismayed to find that Cyril Ramaphosa's deplorable address on the anniversary of the biggest attack of Jews against Jews since the Holocaust being used as in support of a piece of paper produced by a UN body that has no basis in fact. So that's it. Thanks. Cheers.